changing your habits without healing is just another form of coping. And using healing practices without changing your automatic habits is a recipe for spiritual bypassing.
You're listening to the Science and Spirit of Happy podcast, where we discuss the rational, strategic, and psychological methods, but also the deeper reasons and spiritual philosophy behind being happy down to the soul. Happiness isn't just hedonism. It's not even solely personal. Getting happy dramatically increases your effectiveness in every area, from business and finance to relationships. When we align with our own personal version of ideal, we end up not just happier, but healthier, more whole, more successful and richer, but even loving and loved. It's my opinion that getting happy for yourself is the absolute best way to serve the people in your life. I'm your host, Laura Lee Bowers, master healer and academic researcher. And this is another episode diving into
the science and spirit of happy.
A logical path to soul.
G'day, y'all. Welcome back. I am so excited about this episode that I've put together for you guys because, well, I love habits. They are definitely been a lifesaver for me, and I think that they hold the potential to really change people's lives. Plus, I'm pretty darn good at the whole habit thing. However, I was never good at it before. I think that I was one of my professors, when he found out my background before I got into academia, and he was very close to me, actually exclaimed in the middle of a classroom that I was almost feral because I really didn't. I was the opposite of somebody who had, habitual behaviors. I was very free-spirited, I guess is what you say. I traveled all over the world. I did all kinds of crazy stuff. I didn't go to high school very much at all. I did my own thing, created my own path, and here we are. I am doing now a podcast about routines and habits, and usually we associate these things with discipline and the opposite of, spontaneity and freedom. I have a friend, a mother friend who has a child around the same time that I had a child. And I, of course, have a habit and a routine for my son, for my baby. And she said to me one time that she lives, her and her family, they're a little bit more like spontaneous. And that sounds really exciting, but I really like how James Clear in Atomic Habits explained that people that have habits, people who have routines to get the things done that they need to get done on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, etc., they're actually the ones that have the freedom, because all of their stuff is taken care of, right? So the people that have habits, the people that have routines, actually have the space in their lives to be truly spontaneous without sacrificing anything. I think it's a biblical quote that there's no rest for the wicked. And I remember, this was years ago, I was talking to a gentleman who had been raised in the JW community, the Jehovah's Witness community. And he was a musician who liked to get himself into, minor bouts of trouble in the nightlife scene here and there. And he explained to me one time that he finally understood the meaning behind that quote, that there's no rest for the wicked, because when you're off being wicked, you don't get all the other stuff done that you need to get done. So you need to be constantly going, getting the other things done that you need to get done when you are living, what someone might call, a life of more freedom. But the point is, in my viewpoint anyways, that it's not really freedom that you have when you're living a life, spontaneously. It's more like anarchy. And I appreciate anarchists because a lot of them actually really have faith that human nature is good. They think that we can get along without the rule of law. Some of them just believe in vigilante justice, which is, I would much prefer to have a legal system that I could depend on based on the law of human rights. But like, if you're good, if everyone was good, if everybody was, living with their nature, I was explaining in the last couple episodes how I really firmly believe that human nature is good. If we were all good, we probably wouldn't need the rule of law, and we might be able to live in anarchy. And the same goes if you're good. And what I mean by good, the Hebrew word that is translated in the Bible for good actually is more accurately, and I this was explained to me by somebody who studies Hebrew, so I could be wrong, I don't speak Hebrew myself, but this person explained to me that the word that they use in the Bible when they say, God created this and it was good, and God created that and it was good, it actually means fully functioning. That stuck with me because I really like that definition of good. So when I say good, I mean you're fully functioning, right? And in my viewpoint of that is you're aligned. All, your mental, emotional, spiritual, physical reality, your environment, it's aligned. It's fully functioning. If you're good, then anarchy could be, the way you would, probably naturally end up in a super decent spot in life. But if you're not good, right? If you're not fully functioning, if your mental, emotional, spiritual, physical environment is not already aligned with, a natural sort of pull towards like progress, or you've got big goals that are beyond where you are right now, beyond the reality that you're living right now. You want to be in a place, living a life that is beyond the way that you are currently experiencing life, mental, emotional, spiritual, and of course, physical. If you find yourself in either one of those situations, you really need a plan, you need a strategy, and you need to be able to climb the ladder towards where you're going. And that requires habits because, as everybody knows, to climb a ladder, you have to take a step at a time. This is why the quote that the journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step lives on. Well, it doesn't just start with a single step. It continues on with a single step after a single step after a single step after a single step. So if you set up a routine that you're taking step after step after step after step after step after step, the steps are the same, but the place that you get to changes dramatically. That's why that saying that the journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step, that's one of the reasons that it lives on, because the journey of 1,000 miles, your journey to your biggest goals, no matter what they are, if they're big, hairy, audacious goals, which, is subjective. Something that's a big, hairy, audacious goal to me is something that is like norms to somebody else. And your big, hairy goal might be completely normal to, the person sitting next to you. But no matter what they are, no matter how big they are, no matter how far they are from what your current lived reality is now, the steps are what get you there. And it's the consistent steps, right? You can't just take a step and expect to complete the journey of 1,000 miles. And, I don't know how long it would take to walk 1,000 miles, but I would think that it would take a number of days, and each one of those days would have to be filled with many steps, right? So this becomes a lot easier when you don't really need to think about the steps that you're taking, that every day becomes a day full of steps that are carrying you towards your goal. So every time that you do a habit, it's like taking a step up a rung on a ladder. And that to me is freedom. Besides all of these explanations and all of these justifications for how necessary habits are, etc., everything comes down to habitual behavior anyways. Everything from, your nervous system, which is responsible for, essentially how you react to any given situation, your neurons firing, these habitual reactions and behaviors of the body dictate hormonal secretions, which really dramatically affect how you feel. I just had a baby. I'm less than a year postpartum right now, and experiencing how the different hormones made me feel. I'm not talking about, breast tenderness or things that are physical and that we take for granted that we understand, hormones can affect. I mean, my levels of, self-confidence in my body were totally aligned with different hormonal, changes that were going on in me. So like the way that you feel is largely habitual, including the way that you act. I was saying the way that you react, which is a lot of the times, especially when we're in the interdependent stage of happiness, that I've sort of touched on the two different stages of happiness. I will definitely go into this further as we go along, but especially when you're in the interdependent stage of happiness, when you're a conglomerate with people in a community, the way that you react to things, the way that you react to other people's, actions is a major aspect of your life, including the way that you think, the way that you just feel on a general basis, as I was explaining with the hormones, but beyond that as well, the way that you behave, what you believe is actually programmed by your experience, and it is habitual. So when we look at the mind, and I'm going to talk about, the elephant in the room, the mindset aspect of happiness and the pursuit of happiness and fulfillment and big goals in the next episode. But just briefly, when we talk about mindset, when we're talking about our minds and what we think and how we're processing, our life in general, or, a single experience, a single situation, we're actually using between 5 and 10% of our mind. And I am more inclined towards believing that we are capable of using 10%, but most of us are probably, most of the time, including myself, running on about 5. So the rest of your mind state, never mind all the rest of the states, is at least 90% habitual. At least. And in my opinion, I think it's closer to 95 for the most part, unless you're focusing and bringing all of that conscious energy to your mind. So if you're not okay with where you're at, or if you want to get somewhere different, you've got, a substantial goal, even if it's a small goal, if you want to get somewhere specific, you not only need to have new habits, but you also have to break old habits. And I find most of the time when I'm teaching people, they fall into 2 categories. They're either really focused on breaking bad habits, or they're really focused on establishing new habits. But in this, reality that we live in this system that is so interconnected and habitual, you really need to be focusing on both, because wherever there is a habit that needs to be broken, there's a new habit that needs to take its place. And wherever there is room for a new habit, or wherever there is desire for a new habit, there will be an old habit in its place. And we don't normally think of, the things that we don't do as habits, but not doing stuff is a habit. Just like doing stuff is a habit. It is my opinion that habits are the only way to make a concerted plan to get anywhere in life. And I don't know if that is arguable. In some spiritual belief systems, following, your deepest desires is the path to enlightenment. However, you can't really plan out where you're going to go living that way. You also will find it extremely difficult to organize with other people because that is solely living on one side of a two-sided reality. So you can, tap into your most, truest, purest desires and follow those. However, you can't make a concerted plan to end up somewhere. So you're just going to end up wherever, even if you have the most purest intentions and you're following, the purest path. And the dangers of thinking one-sidedly on, just this like emotional, energetic kind of realm and following, spirit is the likelihood that you're actually spiritually bypassing the facts and figures and the physical reality, the data, the lived experiences that you are going through on a daily basis. The same goes if you focus strictly on, habitual behaviors and changing your habits and getting good habits without tapping into that spiritual side, without tapping into that deepest desire, without tapping into the way that you feel about things, then you can end up in a place where you're just coping with not feeling the way that you want to feel and not really being in the space that you want to be in, even though you could be, climbing and getting physical success in different ways. So we all know the person who is like spiritually bypassing everything and is actually, an absolutely terrible person, but is like so like above, the experience that you're experiencing here. And we also know the stories of people who have, done all of these things to maybe like lose weight, but they still don't feel better about their body, even though they've lost the weight, they've changed the physical thing, but they don't feel better. That is focusing on one side or the other and not getting anywhere. So it's like you're rowing with one paddle or one oar. So we can get a really clear picture of this. You don't have to just believe me at, my word, take my word for it. You can actually just imagine for a second the person that you want to be. So imagine the person that you want to be living the life that you want to live. And I want you to really dig deep. We were talking in the episode on inspiration, how, we can end in the episode on purpose, how we can kind of start to get our purpose needs met in ways that are aligned with the cage that we are living in, with the stuck kind of mold that we feel is sticking us in place. I want you to imagine for a second that like you couldn't fail, that you could do anything, you had a magic wand. What would you do then? And kind of dig through that and find something that really aligns with you. That vision of yourself that makes you feel alive, that really brings a kind of lighter, expansive feeling, but also a grounded sense of security. And I want you to look at their daily life. What do they wake up in the morning and do? What does their house look like? Walk by one of the beautiful mirrors in your home, or, if you're in nature, take a look at yourself in a lake reflected in the water. Well, what do you look like? Are you in your pajamas? Probably not. So you can get a sense, look at that person's fridge. What does their fridge look like? They got some food prep in there. They got all of their like lovely organic produce. all washed and ready to eat. Whatever, your ideal life looks like, I can almost guarantee that there are some really good habits that are creating the entire experience. And like I was saying before, I'm really good at habits. Right now, I run over a half marathon a week, and I was never a runner. I could not run a block by the age of 20 years old. And I was not good at habits at all before. As I was explaining, my professor, my mentor, was shocked when he found out that I was almost feral before. So it can be done. It can absolutely be done. This is not, okay, habits are not like a character trait. Like, oh, you're Lauralee, you're organized and you're like systematic and whatever. Like, yes, I'm practical. I'm also like completely out there. My character is very, very, very chill. My character is not the person who gets up and runs, a half marathon with a new baby. That is not my character. However, the person that I want to be is greatly supported by that. So these are the things that I do, and I don't have to struggle to do them. And there is a way. First off, I want to just go through a little bit of the pitfalls. And yes, there can be pitfalls, even in something as beautiful, as necessary, as ubiquitously recommended as habits, as unequivocally accepted as beneficial as healthy habits can have pitfalls. Some habits can actually be like hamster wheels, okay? Like some habits can actually result in a self-sabotage, which comes from mindset. Well, I mean, it can come from a lot of places. It can come from mindset, HeartSet, SoulSet, or BodySet, which, lucky for you, we are diving into in the next 4 episodes. So we'll talk about that at length in the upcoming episodes. And some other habits are actually ways of coping with the stuckness. So with all of the beautiful, wonderful things that you can create and all of the beautiful, wonderful places that you can get to by setting up habits that are steps along your path, habits without healing is just coping. And healing without habits is bypassing. So how do you tell the difference? What do I mean by this? So coping. Okay. When I had gotten to the place where I had independent happiness, I had, climbed that summit. I used to use a meditation practice every day before I went to school, before I went to work, before I went into situations that would have required interdependent happiness, that progress in my interdependent stage. I would use meditation to kind of clarify my emotional and spiritual sphere to go into my day-to-day life in these interdependent relationships. And then at the end of the day, I would do another meditation before going to sleep to kind of calm the sort of chaos that bad habits within myself and lack of progress created. Now, this could have constituted as a practice. It could have, this could have been a meditation practice, but it wasn't a practice because I wasn't getting anywhere with it. Now, a practice, my yoga practice during university kept my stress managed. It kept my energy up. It kept my body light. It kept my happy hormones flowing. That is progressive. That is something that is going to help me move forward. That is healing. That's what makes it a healing practice, that we're going somewhere. Running was also a practice for me. I mentioned that like I never ran growing up. I never ran. I couldn't run a block. I actually had like massive physical reactions, negative physical reactions to running that I still get to this day if I push myself really, really hard. Like when I was in Asia, I didn't realize that the treadmills were in miles, and I was trying to run my kilometer times in miles. I definitely had some panic attack reactions to that. But focusing on regulating my nervous system while I ran, that was an incredibly healing practice, because I would have these anxiety kind of panic nervous system responses continuing to go out and run, consistently, even though it used to only be once a week. And now it's a lot, because I can run with the baby really easily. And that's, our little time. But consistently showing up to pacify that nervous system response. And the same with yoga. Yoga can be powerful that way. This is what made it a practice. Now, habits that I have are like food prep on the weekends, which I've been doing since university. And now it's such an important part of our family, because this allows us, I was talking about that freedom when you have got good habits, healthy habits, the freedom to have space in your life, to do other things, to be spontaneous. Well, the same goes if you have really, really big goals and you need all of the time that you possibly can have to get to those goals, to be working towards them. Having these really healthy habits, like doing things like food prep on the weekend, that can really pave the way and create the space that you need to get to those big goals. Or even, I use quite a lot of space in my life to chill, because that's an integral part to getting to big goals, to happiness, etc. Space in your life is just as important as activity. So if you're concerted about your activity, if hey, I like really healthy food. I mean, who doesn't? Who doesn't like really good, yummy, healthy food? I like all of these things. I need to, or if I, on the weekend, take a few hours to do a bunch of food prep, then that will save me all of these, hours during the week. And then I can chill. I can have space, the space that I have been craving. Also, healthy food aligns with my goals. Healthy food aligns with everybody's goals. When we were talking in the very first episode about the main happiness habits, eating nutritious food is a big one. So all of that aligns with my growth, and that's what makes it a habit. So making my bed when I wake up, that's also a habit, because tidy feels good to me. I think tidy feels good to everybody, and feeling good aligns with my goals. That one's a little bit less straightforward, but it's just as important, those kinds of things that make you feel aligned with the life that you want to get to. And those are habits. Now, a routine is where habits and practices fit. It's the day of the week. It's the time of day. And James Clear goes into how to create habits and atomic habits in a way that I think is really helpful. I'm also teaching a course on how to create healthy habits and practices and create routines with them so that they become automatic. And that is a very, very, very important part of this whole shebang, because when you're getting to big goals, or even if you just want to enjoy your life, these kinds of habits, you need to set and forget all of the things that are, normal, everyday things that you need. So these happiness habits, they're not happiness activities. they're not things that you should try to get to do happy. This isn't an amusement park. You're not going out and doing something that's going to create joy for the moment. These are things that are foundational. That's why I find that the metaphor of steps so helpful, because these really are the things that the rest of your life is supported by. Routines can also be the ritual that's associated with doing the habit or the practice. Like, I was sitting with a friend in her car the other day, and she's a new mother as well. A lot of my friends are right now. And we were signing up for the gym, and she was saying to me previously a couple weeks ago how, I had listed off my morning routine to her, and she like really desperately wanted to be running as much as I run. And then she asked me, she also goes to the same yoga studio as I do, and she asked me how many times a week I go to yoga, and I said 3 times, and she's like, you actually go 3 times? And this is a healthy, fit woman, okay? And I said yes, and she was like, but I couldn't, do that. And I explained to her how I schedule my yoga classes so that I'm not deciding in the moment to go, because there is this thing that I call the niggles, and I will talk about that later, probably in the mindset episode, next episode. But the niggles can really mess up you creating or sticking to a habit. So I schedule my yoga classes. My yoga studio actually has I get penalized if I don't show up. I have to deschedule it, cancel it. Sorry, still postpartum brain. I have to cancel it within a certain time frame to not be penalized. So those niggles happen like in the moments before. They don't happen to me because I have to go. So something like that is a routine. I also work for myself. Okay, so going to work is a habit. Now, going to work is also a habit for you, and you probably don't even realize it. So if you can go to work for somebody else, then you can have a habit. You could work for yourself. You could run, 3 times a week. You could go to yoga 3 times a week. You could do whatever it is that you need to do to get to being the person that you want to be. But for me, I have to create my own habits around getting to work. Whereas, if you work for somebody else, society has probably provided you that habitual framework. So things like, I need to get up and get dressed to go to work. Okay, I can't rock up to work in my PJs because sometimes I do, but I'll get a few things done and then it's kind of over. I need to sit down at my desk to work unless I am in, brainstorming, kind of imaginative, in the realm of like heart and spirit, kind of right brain stuff. I need to be sitting at my desk, because sitting at my desk signals that it's work time, and being ready for work also aligns with me being a professional, and it actually piggybacks on these societal habitual ideas that I already have within me, that this is a way a professional dresses. So I don't need to reinvent the wheel when it comes to my work habits. Basically speaking, the difference between a practice and a habit is that a practice is usually present focused, and present focus gives you internal space. Present focus gives you internal space, but what I mean by internal space is all of your energy is concentrated on right now, and it's usually concentrated on right here, usually within your body. It can be concentrated, you can go out and do a meditation on being in nature and connect with all the trees, or you can do a connected meditation and connect with, the interconnectedness of all of humanity or the world or the cosmos, etc. But a lot of the times when we're talking about practices and talking about healing practices, especially on the independent realm, but in the interdependent realm as well, we're focusing on ourselves. We're doing meditation, we're doing yoga. And what that does is pulling all of our energy in towards creating space within ourselves, within our heart, within our spirit, within our body. And what that does is it really facilitates healing. And healing and growth, the difference between the two is sort of esoteric, because when it really comes down to it, healing is kind of regrowth. So practices can really get you places, especially when regrowth is really the primary growth that you need in the moment. Habits are more forward motion based. They are setting you up. My yoga practice can be a habit, absolutely. And I think at this point in my life, it's both, but I think it really is a habit. And I think in school, it really was a habit for sure, because it's forward motion based. It's keeping and nurturing my body to be lean and lithe and supporting happy hormones that support me in my goals. It's not really that important that you determine whether you have a practice or a habit. Both are healing and both support and nurture growth. Absolutely. It is, however, important that you understand the mechanics of practices, habits, routines, etc., so that you can assess how you are using these things in your life. So, how do you tell if it's coping? Well, understanding what a practice or a habit should be delivering to you will allow you to decipher whether you are moving forward, whether you are using this practice and truly creating space and healing and getting better. So we're talking about the habits in episode 1, the healthy, happy habits. When you're doing all of those habits and you're not fulfilled, it's coping. It's like that person who does all the things to lose the weight and doesn't feel better about their body. They're coping. If you have to force, you are not aligned. If you have to force these things to happen, you have to force these happy habits, and you feel like it's draining, or you feel like it's deprivation. And, losing weight is a really good example of this, because dieting is the number one thing that we're told to do to lose weight. Eating healthily and depriving yourself can look identical from the outside. From the inside, they're polar opposites. One is nurturing, one is supportive, one feels like a gain, and the other feels like a loss. The other feels like an antagonism within, like a war. And that is because there's too much energy being used to fight against the bad habits. Remember, everything that we do is habitual. Everything that we do is a habit. Everything that we're doing, okay? 95% of what we're doing is a habit. Now, if you have to devote so much energy to fighting your bad habits in order to, go through the motions of a good habit, then you need healing. You're missing a huge point of this. You're missing that the bad habits need addressing. And that's what we're going to talk about in the mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical episodes coming up. We're going to talk about habits and healing and on all the different levels. Now, if you feel better temporarily, then you're probably bypassing. So yoga may feel good after a conflict, but it's not going to replace, having to draw boundaries or, protect your energy from other people if you are still in that situation. If you haven't drawn the boundary, if you haven't had the hard talk, if you haven't protected yourself from situations and people that make you feel whatever way. If you're going to yoga to deal with feeling that way, instead of doing the things that you need to do, you're bypassing. Or you're, in a relationship. This is something that was going on in my relationship where, you get into a big fight because there are all of these, just energies or things going on that aren't aligned with your purpose, that aren't aligned with your inspiration, that aren't aligned with your goals to have a healthy, happy family relationship, etc. And you just have these fights, these major blowouts where you let off all this steam, and then you're okay, you feel better temporarily, and then you get in another fight about the same thing, or about the same kind of thing, or all of your fights are like, or many of your fights are like aligned with the same conflict, then that communication, that letting off steam is just, it's bypassing. You're providing a temporary fix, and what needs to happen is change. You need a new habit. You can't just go through these therapeutic ways of dealing without changing what's happened, without changing the habits that are creating the undesirable experience. And if you're good, it's talking about good, being fully functioning, and I keep bringing it back to good because good is what we all want to be at. Now, if you're good natively, this feels very, very different than it does when you are forcing. But I don't want you to think that doing things natively means that you don't need discipline. You still need discipline. You still need a strategy. You still need consciousness. I don't wake up every morning feeling like going for a run. I don't, wake up, as I was explaining, every day that I have a yoga class that I'm supposed to go to yoga, feeling like I want to go to yoga. You still need discipline for sure to overcome those niggles, as I was talking about, and I'll explain a little bit more going forward. And you still need a strategy. You still need that routine, and you still need consciousness. You still need to pull your energy into your consciousness to make these choices. However, when you're doing things natively, like, the benefits far outweigh the sacrifice. It's not even a question. When you're doing it natively and you wake up and you're like, I don't want to run, my mind is just like, just get on the trail, like, it's all good. I hardly ever, I have to be in such a bad place to really not want to. And that actually happened just this past week. We had some technical difficulties. I couldn't get to work, which is my purpose needs. I need to work to feel good, which felt really, really bad. And I work with my husband, which means, work problems are relationship problems, and relationship problems are work problems. And it created this environment that made me feel extremely ungood. And I went for a run the next day and I felt extremely ungood. And there are going to be times on your healing journey when you need to push through. But I realized on that run, I consistently had to push myself through. I just kept feeling like, no, I don't want to. No, I don't want to. No, I don't want to. And I realized in that moment how hard it is to change your habits when you are experiencing an environment or situations that are not aligned with, your purpose needs, or with your purpose, or with your inspiration. So that is really not conducive to you having good habits. If you have these very challenging situations that are not aligned with your purpose and your inspiration, then it needs to change. The habits that are creating those situations of not drawing boundaries, of not, changing situations, not having the hard talks, etc., or making the big moves, that needs to change. Because otherwise, if you're forcing, if you're not in a good place, you're going to have to force yourself to do good things, and that becomes extraordinarily draining. Now, that was not the case on my run. I felt a little bit better after the run. And you can use that knowledge. You can use that knowledge that you're having a really, really, really hard time in order to note that there's something else that really needs to change. And that is what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about using the mind in the next episode to be kind of the control room and to direct all of the other parts of you. Because the person who has loving relationships, the person who's good, who is in loving relationships, like they can't imagine having toxic ones. When you're natively, when you have these automatic good habits, you're natively kind of creating habits and practices that are aligned with your purpose, that are aligned with your inspiration. Like you cannot imagine not doing them. My friend asking me like, how do you go to yoga? I'm like, I can't imagine not go. Like, how do you not go to yoga? Like, we just had babies. Like, I need space. I need healing. I need energy. Like, how do you not? And that person who is experiencing toxic relationships, like they can't imagine just having loving, supportive relationships all around them. And all that comes down to is programming in the mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical realms. And you can absolutely heal that programming. You can absolutely break those habits, that habitual way of behaving, of believing, of living, of feeling, etc., and create new ones. Habits plus healing is everything. It's everything. And if you want to really kind of break down the difference between habits and healing, the way that I like to look at it, habits kind of fit in the mental and physical realm, and healing kind of fits in the emotional, spiritual realm. And although it's really they're really overlapping, and all of these layers of us work together, it is kind of important to understand how I was speaking about inspiration and saying that it's not the mind's job to be happy. It's also not like the body's job to feel joy. What the mind, the mental and physical realms, like what your mind and body is really geared towards feeling, like what happiness feels to the mind and body, is more like peace. And overcoming challenges is part of that. It's the emotional and spiritual realm where what we associate with happiness, like the feelings of joy and just fulfillment, that satisfaction kind of feeling, the traditional sort of view of happiness, that is experienced on the emotional and spiritual realms. So even when we think about things like having money, which is the physical realm, it's also energetic, but the physical, accumulation of wealth, really what that does, it doesn't make us happy. It gives us peace of mind. It also facilitates us having a fully functioning life, because whatever we need to do in our lives, we can have happen. We can hire someone to do this. We can buy this thing that we need. It allows us to live that good life, which is fully functioning. Even your best body, I can tell you, I can attest that being in your best body doesn't feel like anything. You think that, you're going to get fit, you're going to feel so happy. No, it doesn't. Just like those people who lose weight, who get into, their physical goals and don't feel any different. Getting into your best body doesn't feel any different. What it does is it gives you peace in your body. What it does is you stop worrying about your body. You stop thinking about your body. You stop feeling anxious about your body, etc. And it gives you the space and the freedom and the peace to feel however you want to feel. And that's really what we want. And I think it's really important to point out, the difference between what we want in our minds and our bodies is not what we want in our heart and our spirit. We want in our minds and our bodies is peace. We want peace of mind and peace of body. And what we want in our heart and our spirit is fullness. We want fullness, emotional well-being, wholeheartedness. Habits and healing are absolutely the way to get to that peace of mind and body and that fullness of heart and spirit. And we're going to break down exactly what that means on each of the layers in the next episodes. And if you want to learn more about really creating and implementing a strategy for healthy habits and healing practices, I would encourage you to check out the courses. You can get Unstuck, the first course for this season, for free. And I'll see you in the next episode when we talk about mindset. Good day, y'all.